Today I want to share with you how the yin and the yang linking vessels, our wings, can support you in your life, in opening up your heart to others, and in also being able to protect and support yourself and inwardly reflect. So the yin and the yang linking vessels, as you can see from these two pictures, they have a lot of points in our body and in our arms and shoulders and neck and head. Well, the yang one has more points in our head and shoulders. The yin one, we could say, has more points in our chest and our abdomen. And I see them as representing our bird-like nature. Now, some people put these vessels as starting in the legs, but as you can see from the pictures, they don't really have many points in the feet, and two of the points are in fact their paired regulating points. Each vessel has a regulating point which links it with another vessel. Of course, even if we're thinking that the linking vessels are more like the wings and more like our bird-like nature, birds have feet and legs, and birds do connect to the earth. So we do connect to the earth, but it's a much lighter connection to the earth than the stepping vessels, which you may have looked at the video on the stepping vessels, because these are both, they create the outer family, and all this whole group of the yin and the yang linking and the yin and the yang stepping are how we bring information from the outer world back into our midline or our inner family of, well, the central channels and the midline. Because you see that on these diagrams there aren't many points along the midline, but they do bring energy back to the midline. Conception vessel, the base of our throat, at this point, the celestial pathway shows again, like a bird-like nature, our opening into space. And the governing vessel point opposite at the base of our skull, also the wings come back to the centre, and the governing vessel is also a point on the occiput, bringing back to the centre of our brain. And so they're connected with opening up to space and then linking back into the centre line of our body, but also opening out into the space. Like I was saying, with our arms can open up, and we're opening up our heart to connect with the space, but with people in that space, to open our heart and connect with people, with places, with the land. And then that's the yang more, and then bringing that back into our inner self and being in a more reflective mode, and that's the yin. But the yin and the yang working together also can bring a form of protection, that if we don't want to open up to the outer world, we can use our yang to protect the yin, and then we can go into reflection. So there are a lot in our arms, and this is actually shown in the character for the linking vessels. So here's the Chinese characters for the linking vessels. Now, on the right hand side, that character actually means a bird with a short tail. So it's really showing that bird-like nature. But birds, of course, are not only made up of wings, they have a body. And so we can see now in the charts of the vessels, on the yin linking, there are quite a few, in fact, spleen points, earth points in the abdomen. And so the linking vessels are bringing back, as I said, to the governing vessel and conception vessel, but also to the girdle vessel. They don't pass directly through the midline because that's connecting with the other vessels of the midline. But the linking is really the yin part, the front, our abdominal muscles. The spleen points are on the lateral borders of the recti muscles, and then it's also into our chest. and the yang is more onto our gluteus muscles of the outer of hip, gallbladder 29, which is in fact a shared point with the stepping vessels. So the stepping vessels bring more the connection from the earth itself, from yin, and they bring it back to the pelvis. And the linking vessels, it's a lighter connection, it's not so bound to the earthy rhythms of 24-hour cycles. In fact, going back to the ideogram, if you look at it on the left hand side, that symbol is actually a silk net containing fire. And so the linking vessels are often talked about as being related more to the longer cycles of our lives, to especially the 7 and 8 year cycles, which are often linked with key turning points in our lives when we're 7 or 8. So there's 7 year cycles and 8 year cycles, 7 years for women and 8 years for men. So 7 and 8, we're emerging from our childhood and gradually getting older, more independent, preparing for our adolescence, which has happened at the in the next cycle, 7 to 14 or 8 to 16, another turning point at the end of the second cycle. And then we go through these different cycles, and 7 cycles of 7, 49, is really for women the menopause, and for men it's not so definite. So we've got these turning points of developing, growing, becoming more mature physically, but then also becoming more mature, we could say, emotionally, with the wisdom of our years. That would be the aim for the Chinese. Of course, by 50, our physical self is beginning to decline, but it's all relative. We can still live well and healthily and be quite physically active, although obviously not in the same kind of way as when we were younger. But we can still be well until we're 100. So turning points later on in life are not so obviously dramatic, but they're built on how we live the turning points in our earlier life. And this is really the nature of the linking vessels, is this continuing cycles of 7 years and 8 years. The longer cycles, how we're bringing what we live in the outer world back into our body, and how it's influencing our body, and the way that we retain memories and wisdom in our body. But do we become fixed? Often people do start to become fixed and create, I think, false limits as they age. Oh, I can't do that because I'm not that age anymore, or they keep the same belief systems as when they were younger, rather than continually updating, opening up to new information, bringing new information, reprogramming ourselves. That's essentially the nature of the linking vessels, but also really how we live any transition in our life. That takes time, that draws upon the wisdom of our body and is informed, of course, by our previous experiences. But are we limited by our previous experiences, or can we draw wisdom from them and decide to act differently in the current moment and in the future? So, using the wisdom of these vessels and wisdom of our body to make decisions during other key transitions or turning points in our lives, like moving house, like changing job, like creating new relationships. Changing job probably involves making new relationships with new colleagues, meeting new people, but also they're linked with our more intimate relationships. So I've talked quite a lot about our wings, but we also have quite a few points in the pelvis, which I mentioned. So this is, of course, more about how we open up more intimately to other people, which does connect back into the inner family of vessels. And so, as we're going through these aging experiences in our lives, are we keeping this same openness of our wings, embracing new experiences, or are we resisting, perhaps through fear, through prior trauma, whatever? And it's really, that's the affirmation I've created, is can you access the wisdom in your body's memory, but can you also release what's no longer serving you? You don't have to repeat the patterns of your past. You can always, whatever age you are, choose to live things differently, even until we die. These linking vessels can help us to transform. So physically in our body, they are often related with neck and shoulder and arm and hand issues, because if we're too rigid and tight and held on, and it can be in our jaw and our head and our mind, then we can't be open to new changes. And maybe we've had an accident and it blocks us as well, and that changes how we experience and how we weave the cloth of our body. And this used to be more typically associated with people being older. As we get older, we might limit our movements, especially of our arms. But even now, these days, teenagers and even younger, young children are on mobile phones, even toddlers, and they're then closing in physically, maybe opening up to a world in a different kind of way, but more through the brain, not through opening up posturally. And so then we might think we're being open more, but in some ways perhaps we're being opened up less, and we become more rigid in our thinking and maybe only open to things that fit in with what we think, with our belief system, rather than being open more. So often it can express as issues with the shoulders, often being too tight, blocked, restricted, but it can be too much laxity, hypermobility, lack of being able to hold things together, and being a bit lost in space. The other key areas can be in the abdomen. So weakness in the abdomen, often it's weakness in the yin, would be weak abdominal muscles, weak pelvic floor, stress incontinent issues. We know that people often do tend to get those kind of issues more as they're older, maybe hypermobility in the joints of the pelvis, hip and lower back issues. But it could also be too much tightness, too much rigidity in the hips, which also can lead to hip and shoulder problems, but coming more through contraction and tightness. And so coming back also to reflecting on this image of a silk net. On the right hand side of the character, that is the bird that I was telling you, the wing image, but on the left is silk thread containing a fire. So it's also what I've been saying about protecting our heart, containing our fire. A silk thread, that our body is like a cloth that we weave through life, but we still need to be connected to the earth lightly, like a bird, not rushing off into space. So I've talked a lot about the shoulders and the hips and the pelvis, but it's really our whole body and how much we can be light within our whole body and be adaptable and flexible and open to new ideas and new ways of being, whatever stage of life we're at. And so I want to share the mudra and the affirmation that I have created for these vessels, which is really about how we create space and allow space, how we create space within the tissue of our body, but how we can allow space and new experiences to come into our body. So middle finger is heart protector, forefinger is the triple heater. Those are the regulating points of these vessels. Heart protector 6 and triple heater 5. That's why I've emphasised a lot the arms. That's the first way through these vessels we bring this experience into our body. So we have those together, but we link them with our thumb, which brings a connection which is the breath, in and out, yin and yang, but also just a light, these silk threads connecting us lightly to the earth, holding lightly, and then we've got some space within our body, so we're connecting in, but we have space, and so we keep our index finger and our little finger free to open into space. We keep space Within our heart, middle of the hand, heart protector 8 is a point relating to our heart, and we can just hold this space. And as you do this, of course, it's really important that your shoulders are relaxed, that you're not tight, and your jaw, because we also can connect it to bringing the mudra in from space, bringing the space slightly in to rest on the conception vessel, celestial pathway, and then bringing it to rest the base of our skull, feeling a connection with our brain and our heart and our pelvis and our kidneys. Our ancestral line, the wisdom in our body, is not only our own wisdom but that of our ancestral line. And so the affirmation of the Yin and the Yang linking vessels is: I access the wisdom within my body, within the cloth of my body, within the memories of my body, and I can release that which no longer serves me. So thank you for listening to my thoughts on the linking vessels, the Yin and the Yang linking vessels. If there's anything that didn't feel clear or you'd like more information on, then please do feel free to ask me questions. Put your questions in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them.